it's I don't know why we say this. It's your turn, like, you know, it's our turn. So, what are you thinking about? Yeah, it's not my turn, your turn. Now it's our turn. But what are you thinking about, wondering about? All questions welcome. Comments about practice welcome, and you need to use the microphone for those on streaming. Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
Sounds good. Seems good, right? All right.
It's good.
When she's answering, just click the button back off.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one thing that I've been using as part of my practice to ground myself if my mind wanders is the mantra Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha.
Mm-hmm. The Buddhist mantra.
Right. And I just was wondering if that's like appropriate to do if I'm practicing calm abiding and I'm like, this is a great way for me to like pull myself back.
Of course. You know, it's a good question. The way one teacher explained to a group of us that I found helpful that relates to that question, it's like the Dharma's a big medicine chest, you know, and, you know, maybe your medicine chest at home, you open it and there's this for aching and this for, you know, the stomach and this for feet or whatever. So we can approach it like that because in a certain way, our teachers can guide us and our spiritual friends can give us help. But the one who knows our minds the best is us. That's our own Buddha wisdom. So use what works, you know. The thing is, with doing that, it might be helpful to look a little closer at how you use that mantra. I like that method too. We'll do my calm abiding, then depends what's happening in my mind, which is the whole point, is to see what's going on in there. And nobody out here can see what's going on in there. Even you told us, then that would be a story about what's going on, and it wouldn't be really what's going on. So we have to work, as I said, when I was leading us into the practice, with excitement and dullness, you know. And so we can just see it and then apply certain antidotes like that. Like, oh, I know this mantra works for me. It might, when you do it, do you have a visualization like of Shakyamuni, golden light? Okay.
Usually it's, I have a picture that I'll reference, and it's, I don't know, it's him with his like offering bowl.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. So, and I meant in the mind, kind of. So, yeah, that can brighten our mind, you know. And so, again, we need to know in the moment, does my mind need brightening, or is it already so excited? One of the ones to bring it down is imagine a small dark dot, kind of lower down. Could be on the floor in front of you or on your pecha table. And you just bring it down and focus on that small dark dot for a little bit. You can feel it come down from the spin, you know. But if it's very dull, of course, you don't want to be doing that. You want to be brightening it. So we work with it, yeah. And then the only other experience I've had is don't shift around too much in a calm abiding session. Like, oh, I'm going to do the Muni mantra, oh, then I'm going to picture Vajrasattva, then I'm going to, you know, throw the blue medicine Buddha in here too. You know what I mean? Yeah, because that's just more busy mind. It's a virtuous busy mind. So that's better than a busy mind that's planning mayhem. But, you know, it's still busy. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and yes. What was that, Ryan? Oh, just being silly.
Exactly.
Well, good.
I have a question in regards to anger and how it seems like in Buddhist philosophy, anger is just, it's not good. It's destructive. It's like, ooh, just, not that you shouldn't feel anger. It's just anger has a corrosive, destructive quality. But in Western psychotherapy, anger is useful. It's telling you something that you're, it's like a defense mechanism. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious if they should be married, if I'm not quite, like there should be some kind of bridge between the two. Because I kind of see both sides, so, and maybe I'm just not understanding the quality of anger in a Buddhist context.
Yeah, well, first of all, you ask such good questions. This is big. But first of all, in Buddhism, it's not at every level of Buddhism considered a problem. Anger in the third turning of the wheel, and even in the second, it can become the source of full enlightenment because it carries a lot of energy, number one. Secondly, we all engage in it pretty often. If you look on a continuum, most of us will say, well, I don't have anger, but we mean I don't get enraged, you know. But if we look during the day, do you feel irritated for a moment, frustrated? Those are all forms of anger, and they move along the continuum till, you know, you might smash some dishes against a wall or something. For example, in tantric level, you know, deity practice and moving more into the looking at appearance and emptiness. If you look at our tanka there right above Sanjay, on the lower right, you see a wrathful Vajrapani, right? Yeah. And you will see wrathful beings often in Tantra. And they are, Bill was talking about this today a little bit. These wrathful beings bring their anger into service to the Dharma. So it's like, I got all this really angry energy, and I'm going to bring it into the Dharma and burn up kleshas, burn up negativities. So it by itself, anger's just empty also. It's empty of any solid bad, solid good, solid neutral. Now, I imagine most people in here have had a time where you got so angry, something got very clear that perhaps had been very unclear. And if you didn't damage anyone or anything, it can be really powerful. Like I think of, you know, you might say some certain speeches by, say, Martin Luther King or someone could say and look, wow, those were angry, but it's a clarity. It's an anger against injustice, an anger against us, kind of a I don't care or meh, meh, you know. So it has its uses. But in Tibetan Buddhism, there's always these three levels. the fundamental, foundational teachings. Anger is kind of stay away. See it, move away, shift it. In the middle, you use it, the middle turning, you use it a lot to transform it, like in the mind training, Anybody know the Wheel of Sharp Weapons text? We're studying that now.
There's also like Vajrakilaya or Purba.
Yeah, there's many kinds of these in the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. It's Yamantaka, or people say Yamantaka. I don't know how's the best pronunciation. Yamantaka.
I usually say Yamantaka, but
Yeah, there's several. Anyway, he's pictured as a very fierce, huge, dark blue buffalo with bloody head and fire all around, and he's got, I think, 37 legs and 9 heads. Anyway, he's just burning up anger like crazy. So he's an antidote to it. So in higher practices, you can get introduced to such a energy and use it. But you want to be very close to a teacher, because it can go awry, and you think you're all that, and then you're running around being mean to people, saying, I'm purifying them. Not really. And then I just want to touch on the piece with psychology, because I think I already kind of did. There can be quite a good usefulness in anger, but we can also be very stuck in the pattern. It's whenever, Melissa, we're making, whether it's in the psychological realm or in the Buddhist realm, which of course there's crossover, we're making one rule, or like, anger's always bad. Anger's very useful. Well, it all depends. On Monday it might be useful, and on Tuesday it might be suffering. And it depends on all the conditions around and your own mind. But I have, and many have, it's not magic, experienced anger transforming a situation with a lot of clarity. I remember once in my law office, I won't describe the details, but it was during a holiday party, and some really weird sexist stuff started up. And I was so distressed, I started walking out. I got about 2 blocks away from the building. I turned around and I went back, and I don't know, I was being Vajrapani. I just walked in that room and I said, this is insulting. This is got to stop, da-da-da. And of course, they were all terrified and shocked. My supervisor was in there and involved with it. But, and I turned to walk out, and the next day, a lot of really good things came of it. Apologies, like, oh my God, what were we thinking, So it can happen like that. Does that get at what you're... Seems like there's a little bit something else there.
Yeah, I guess just being obviously a beginner and not being able to handle
you don't want to be
the energy of, I'd rather somewhat dissolve it or transform it in some way, just because I don't have the skill yet. So it sounds promising that eventually the practice can lead me to be able to handle, like sit in the fire a little bit longer.
Yeah, but that is advanced practice. Okay. And in the meantime, follow Shantideva with his way of the Bodhisattva. He says, when it rises, remain like a log. So you don't do anything. There's the urge to physically act, the urge to verbally act. You don't do anything. You simply remain like a log. And what your mind is doing is working on it, seeing it. Yeah, see it and feel it. Feel all the heat or the cold, whichever. There's hot anger, cold anger. Feel it and don't do anything. And then you will experience its true nature. It's its true nature of joy, too. it goes. Because it's empty of solidity. It's empty of permanence. It might take, if we have certain habits of anger, it might take longer and many times to see its impermanence, to see its ultimate nature, nothing there. And so that's more of a step toward it. There's also conceptual steps at that level of, before anger ever rises, think about, in a calm time, think about the disadvantages of it. There's a whole contemplation, and especially the Gelugpa tradition. You just sit and think about the disadvantages of anger. When I get angry, people don't want to be around me. I say things that I have to make up for later. I ruin things. I wreck my own health. It's awful. So you want to think about that prior to ever, not when you're in it. And you start, then what I experienced using that method, which was one of the favorites at the Abbey, when it starts rising, those thoughts come in. Uh-oh, I know where this goes. I don't want to do it. I can turn away. Yeah. Does that help? Okay, great. Now, I think there were a couple people. Yeah, Ryan and Matthew.
Okay, yeah. So I've heard it said that, anger is one of the most damaging sentiments for sentient beings. That it really is hard for sentient beings to experience that. So I guess on some level it's a form of energy, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't use it skillfully, it seems like the tacit response is that it's harmful because of habits. Yeah?
Well, because of outcomes.
Yeah. Well, the habits create like the delusion about how you use that energy.
Yeah.
Right? So we have bad habits that we aren't skillful with the energy of anger.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. So then we just end up harming people most of the time.
Yeah.
So on some level, anger is an energy, but unless you're really, really skillful, you're not going to use it to help beings. You're going to just end up harming them.
Yeah.
So what does this have to do with, I think it's like the 4 karmas or something like that, pacifying, magnetizing.
Oh, yeah.
Destroying those.
Yeah.
So isn't that a teaching of some kind?
Purifying.
I think it's purifying,
Increasing.
pacifying. Yeah.
They've got different words, but white is purifying, yellow is increasing, red is attracting or influencing, and dark blue is wrathful. So that's probably what you're thinking.
Yeah.
There is a wrathful energy. Those are 4 kinds of activities, particularly in the third turning, kind of the more tantric. Those 4 show up, So you can think about them just on your own human level. You like to have kind of a pure mind, purified, that's the white color. Yellow is increasing. We like to have more abundance of the good parts. Red is attracting or influencing. It's interesting because these follow what we know, yellow, gold, white, pure, yellow, gold, that's increasing. Red, the heart, the attraction, and dark blue, almost black, like big storm. Yeah. So maybe was that where you were thinking?
Yeah, that was my question, is that when is it appropriate to learn those things? Is that when you've pacified your mind to the point where you might be able to actually use those energies?
Oh, I can't answer that. When it will be appropriate, they'll show up. So just keep practicing. Okay. I mean, they just show up. Right. I didn't run out looking for them. It's like, there they are, some teachers teaching them, and you go, okay, this is showing up.
Yeah, because I guess I tend to revert to this, and I've noticed other people tend to revert to this as well, is, well, what do I do about this? And then
about this what?
About any situation. And
usually
we just respond based on past habits,
yeah,
right?
Patterns.
Yeah. But so I guess I'm just reflecting on that. That's all.
Yeah, and so as we even do our shamatha, we stop doing that. Why? Because shamatha gets us in the habit of seeing, oh, I'm being passive here. Or, oh, I'm stepping in and being the Ms. Bossy. That's my favorite fallback pattern. Tell everybody what to do. I'm being the big sister, you know. But you see it, and that gives you some space. So maybe then the next time you don't quite do it, and the next time you actually find yourself doing something different, or you find yourself doing nothing, and something unfolds from the other people, and you go, fascinating. Yeah.
I've noticed that where the more I practice, the more like an energy will hit you and you get an emotion.
Yeah.
And it just hits you like a storm or something. But then if you can sit with it for a second, you might not just react like that. Something else might happen.
Yeah, and that's back to Shantideva in reading The Way of the Bodhisattva over and over. Paperback book, but marvelous. And it's kind of harsh in some parts. It's got a really terrible chapter that used to be translated as all the attraction stuff was about women, like watch out for women, you know. But that's because he was a monk talking to monks. But if you just transverse it and say, you know, attraction to anybody in that crazy romantic kind of, they're going to save my life and this is going to be wonderful forever, which is definite setup for suffering. But Shantideva, he's really got this down, you know, and the anger party just go like a log. And I have, in some of my biggest angry times, been able to just freeze like that. See it and just, it's almost like you're trembling because you're working against the patterns which have probably been going more than one lifetime. But when you do it, it's so cool because the whole thing passes and you didn't do your old crazy thing.
Yeah. But I think the awareness is like the wheel of sharp weapons where you're cutting through the patterns that are coming up for you as you want to react to that energy that's coming your way. So you're cutting through the experience of that energy coming your way and the patterns that came with it before. Yeah. So that's the wrathful part, is that your awareness is actually a wrathful weapon in a sense, right?
Can be. And so if you're interested, we just finished The Wheel of Sharp Weapons in the mind training class. And just reading that text, it's amazing. That text is all about trample on the head of these afflictions, you know. It's got this trample them, you know. I love it. So, but some people find it very disturbing because it's very, but sometimes that's the appropriate energy. I don't think a lot of times, I think in the West, our government certainly use it too much, but it can be helpful sometimes to use that kind of really firm energy, like Gandhi did, or MLK did, or, you know, there's a certain way of stand up to it, you know. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I think Matthew had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly, first off, that the passages that Zopa's talking about is I believe the section is patience, and I read that one like over and over again. It's really good. The section of Shantideva's Bodhisattva path that Zopa was referring to is the section titled Patience.
Yes, chapter 8 on patience. That's
really
what
good.
Geshe Lundap Sopa taught us. He's showing up tonight, so that was the chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And I wanted to ask about sorrow and if, you know, because I hear a lot about, you know, harnessing the energy of anger and wrath because it's such a potent energy that can be very effective on the path. And but I tend to just do what Shantideva says and, you know, sit like a log. That's like even just like sitting there and doing and just like choosing to be passive can be really difficult.
That is not passive. When you're working like that, when you're deliberately being a log, it is not passive.
Okay.
It is hard work. Passive is when you don't make any kind of choice.
When there's the habit rules.
Yeah, you're the passive habit. Goes this. I don't. It's more passive. Is more. I don't care. I don't have a dog in this fight. When actually we do.
Right.
We're not taking care of our dog.
In the same way that anger can be.
That's an old saying. I don't have a dog in this fight. You know.
It's a good one.
You got to take care of your dog because your dog's out there doing stuff. So go get your dog and say, I have a dog in the fight. And say to my dog, sit. Sit.
I've been, because I think you've talked about before about the famous Tibetan Buddhist master who would like just kind of cry pretty much.
Oh, Longri Tangpa.
Longri Tangpa, yeah. I just like I've been wondering for quite a while if sorrow can apply to the path in the same way that anger can. If anger is sorrow a potent energy that can also be worked with in that same way.
Yeah. Here's the trick with it. Sorrow is this is interesting. Regular old sorrow, the kind that most of us have, is attachment related. I didn't get what I wanted. Sorrow. Longri Tangpa's sorrow is bodhisattva level. He's not sad for anything Longri Tangpa didn't get or did get. He is looking, actually it's connected to Chenrezig. He's looking out at the vast array of suffering sentient beings and just crying with a broken, open heart. They say bodhisattvas, broken, open hearts. Interesting that Jesus is shown with his
flaming
broken,
heart.
open heart. So 2 different kinds. Most of ours is related to I wanted to be with X, or I wanted to have. I didn't want this person to die, and they did. And so you can see the difference, right?
Can the energy of worldly sorrow be worked with, or when we're talking about working with wrath and anger, are we talking about awake wrath and anger rather than just like worldly wrath and anger?
Yeah. I mean, anger and attachment. Anger's in the big headings: aversion, all the anger, frustration, all that. I don't want, push away. Attachment, they're kind of equal kleshas. They're based on ignorance. So the bottom one, the foundation's just ignorance. We don't know who we are, what we're doing, what we're made up of, and what we're not made up of. Based on that ignorance, we pile on attachment and aversion all around the I, the separate I. So, okay, so you see the picture, right? So it's not like anger is more important than the attachment to work on. And in fact, if you take a coin, they're just like this. Why do we get anger? Because our attachment didn't get filled. Or we got our aversion. Someone's around we don't want, so we're angry. Or we didn't get what we want, so we're angry. So attachment and aversion just go like this. A lot of times in Buddhism, with our methods of calm abiding or mind training transformation or imagining we are deities with guidance, those are all to pull us out of the basic ignorance. Look, your true nature is Buddha nature. What does Lama Michael say? Sometimes think there's nothing here but Chenrezig. Meaning to this set of aggregates, nothing here but Chenrezig. Then I look out there and say, nothing out there but Chenrezig. Oh, I just feel so happy when I say that. Now, you don't look like Chenrezig to me, but you look pretty good, you know. So you can also play with it, like everybody's got a little Go Buddha in there, and you can see it, you know. So does that kind of get towards it? So
think
sorrow
so.
isn't its own category, it's under attachment.
Talking about wrath, we could just as easily be talking about sorrow, just not explicitly.
Wrath,
Well, I mean, like, so I get so.
how could they work?
The why I asked this is because
Yeah.
I found that it's much easier for me to practice sincerely and without contrivance when I'm sad than any other emotional
yeah.
state.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if is that skillful? Is that just like
Sure.
what's going on there?
Yeah, sure it is. And it's just a stage. It won't be like, I'm going to ride this all the way to enlightenment. Yeah.
Okay.
But, sure. If it opens your heart, and, I've found for myself, I'm not wishing for this, when I get really sick, my practice is really good. Like when I had cancer, when my eye went blind, you get really good because it's like, okay, this is really real, and I can't just ignore this. Like, oh, I'll do 20 minutes. At the end of 20 minutes, your eye is still blind, or your cancer's still there because you got to go get it taken out, and then you don't know. These kind of things can arise and really inspire us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but see the sorrow as an inspiration, here's the ditch, not as a romantic story. You know what I mean by romantic stories of the sad lover who goes off and wanders the beach alone.
Don't make it one of those sad scenes where the person's on the cliff and it's windy and
Yeah, or walking down the beach. You know what I mean? Because that's just more I, me, mine. Yeah, my story, I, me. Okay? Yeah, good. Because it's empty too. Your sorrow's empty. It comes and goes. You don't have it all the time, do you? Every moment of every day. Yeah. Yeah. Just keep watching and see how everything changes. Yeah. Pat.
And could you talk a little bit more about the distinction between sort of the reacting as a log, which is to the Western interpretation would be called passivity,
Or suppression.
right?
Suppression.
Even worse. Oh my God.
Yeah. Suppressing.
But because we do occasionally find ourselves in situations where action is called for.
Yeah.
Somebody's hitting somebody and that's not okay, and I shouldn't just sit like a log if that's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you could just sort of define the distinction a little more.
I had it there as you were asking, and now it slipped away. Let me see if I can get back there. Okay, it kind of goes back to a bit of what I was saying from Matthew's question. When you are acting like a log, it's hard work. It is not passive. So I've told this story so many times I'm reluctant to tell it again about my husband and I driving in the car. How many remember it? If you don't remember, I'll tell it again. So a few of you, but more than half don't. So driving in the car, and I had just been studying Shantideva at the Abbey and was on a retreat and came home. And really thinking about that patience chapter, the disadvantages of anger, and thinking about our patterned fights. Most people have some patterned fights after a while, or little, ping, ping things. And so we used to have them in the car. So we're driving in the car, and the pattern starts. For the first time, I saw the pattern. It was like, oh, he says that, I didn't see it till he said A and I said B. That's the first 2 steps. Then I went, oh, the pattern. Then C occurred. He said C. And instead of doing D, I saw the pattern. So I went like a log. And it was hard work. It was like the pull to say D in the same irritated tone was big. And I was just working so hard in total silence. And Stuart turned and said, what are you doing over there? Because now he's thrown into. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's like we're supposed to do D, and what are you doing over there? I'm like, you're not doing D. And I said, I am working so hard to not say something angry. Everything was so quiet, and he said, wow. So something happened, from that. So it's not passive, and I'm not suppressing in this sense. I was feeling every feeling. It was like heat and an urge to talk and some little, like the effort kind of almost tremblingly holding, Now that's kind of extreme, maybe. I don't want to judge it. But do you see, that's not suppressing. I was fully aware of all the stuff coursing through my body and my mind. Like I'm supposed to say D, I really want to say D. I really, really want to say D. And then, it passed. So that seems like part of your question.
I do see where, I definitely appreciate the concept of that there is, that it's an active awareness that you're striving for. I guess I'm looking for a, quick universal guideline for that.
No such
thing.
No quick universal guideline.
That situation where introspection doesn't cut it.
Yeah. So like you hear your neighbor beating up, his kid or something, her kid, her kid. The key is, what's your motivation if you go over there? Right. So if you go over totally angry at that person, it's probably not going to help the situation. If you can go over with compassion toward that person and towards the people in the victim role, you can probably do something effective. That's a pretty high bar. Pretty high bar. I would say at least don't add to the suffering. So sometimes it's good to stay home and do prayers for them, or call the police if it's like to that. I mean, this is a question of skillful means. We can't take a formula and apply it. What are the skillful means? But the skillful means work if we're really clear on our motivation and our intention. So the thing Shantideva says in that book about that situation is someone's hitting someone with a stick. He says, be mad at the stick, not the person. And then you can intervene, because you're not mad at that suffering being. The batterer is suffering. Yeah. And we don't see that. We tend in this culture, and probably all cultures, I don't know, but this is the one I'm in, to make victims and oppressors. And the victims are good and the oppressors are bad. And it's really important for us to peel away behaviors. Victim behaviors are suffering behaviors. Oppression behaviors are suffering behaviors. Both are suffering behaviors. And the humans have Buddha nature, so transformation can occur. But do we have the skillful means to do that? We're working on it, you know. The more calm we can bring, the more clarity we can bring, the more courage we can bring, the more clarity we can bring, we can become effective.
My wife and I have had many lengthy discussions on this topic.
Can you talk a little louder into the, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, what the thought that brought up for me is that there's people like to talk about righteous indignation, and
yes.
I forget who it was I've heard, but it's like most of the time it's just indignation. Yeah.
Just everyday indignation without a very good motivation. It kind of devolves to gossip. We're just telling how bad those other people are, and then we feel good in comparison. Yeah. It's hard to have that kind of clear kind of motivation. And that's what we're working toward, though, is seeing, as I said in the beginning of guiding the calm abiding, we're all suffering. There isn't anybody who isn't. The richest, most materially comfortable person in the world suffers like crazy for all kinds of reasons. They're aging, they're going to die. Their money's not going to save them. The most famous ones suffer. There isn't anyone who doesn't suffer until our minds are, till our kleshas are purified, as we say. And that purification is seeing them clearly and seeing the core of their nature, which is empty of any solid, separate, inherent existence. That's the same nature of every particle and non-particle everywhere. That's the same nature as the Buddha. It's the same nature as a war. It's the same nature as a beautiful ceremony. It's the same nature as good food or garbage. It's very paradoxical, but that's what seems to be going on. And when we can experience that in the least bit, or even conceptualize about it, we start taming our own mind. Because we don't grab on to things that look pretty, and we don't push away things that we have deemed ugly. And then all of a sudden, for example, only through the kindness of my teachers did my breast cancer turn into something so transformative. Because I went through it like this with them. Like, what do I do next? How do I think about this? What do I do next? What do I do next? And I had the blessing to be able to do that. And they told me, do this, don't think this, don't think that. They would say, don't ever think of this as anything but purifying you. Now, there was a challenge. They said the whole purpose of this is it is purifying you. I'm like, you're kidding. It's cancer, for God's sake. But you go home with the koan, and you sit there, okay, how is that working? Well, I'll try it out. And it's a lot happier thinking about it that way than I'm some terrible victim of horrible things, So, and do Tonglen for everybody who's got it, everybody who's got this, everybody who has any kind of illness. Bring them into your mind. So these things can be transformed through this path. We just use our everyday arguments even. Okay. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you one kind of addendum question. I'm really working with this a lot in my life right now, this business of how we handle our anger. And I liked your story of where there's, the sexist banter at the party, and then, you go out and you center yourself and you strike clearly, and it's skillful, right? And then the next day, the people say, "Oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We're going to do these beneficial things now."
Yeah.
And we can use other examples like that, right?
Yeah.
Like eventually, the Mahatma Gandhi does free India, and MLK does help achieve civil rights, and it strikes me that there are times where folks could act skillfully, and it doesn't have those outcomes, So like if your coworkers might have been,
we could have had
Weinstein and Trump and Bill Cosby, I mean, they might not have the next day said, "Oh my gosh, thank you, this is helpful, we're sorry." It can go, but your action would be the same, right? Like your act of being skillful aside from outcomes. So it seems to me that there are times where we may center ourselves, act skillfully, and there doesn't happen to be the fortunate outcome.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask you to say something a little bit about that, because I feel like that's happening sometimes, and I want to, then I ask myself, wait a second, was I just being, rightfully indignant and not very skillful, or was I skillful even though the outcome wasn't so lovely?
Yeah, we don't do this for outcome. I did not know what would happen when I went in there and did that. I actually didn't care. That's helpful. But I felt compelled because I was leaving and going home. I was trying to say I was leaving the office so upset and going home. And I got down from the 9th floor a couple blocks away and just went, no, I can't just leave that and come back to work tomorrow. So you don't know what's going to happen. And rather than paying any attention to the outcome, the attention needs to be paid to motivation. Why am I doing this? And that motivation to be bodhicitta has to include the welfare of everyone in the room. So I didn't go back there to tell the guys off, mostly guys, because in those days, as a young lawyer, it was 99% guys, and a lot of really good guys who helped me so much in my career. So I partly went back because I cared about them. They were my friends, and I was shocked at the behavior, and I didn't want to kind of leave them in it. You know what I mean? I don't mean I was like some kind of saint, but it was like I didn't go in there to beat them up. Is that kind of, you seeing the difference?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I didn't go in to compare myself like I'm cool and you're not. It was just pretty white-hot anger towards this has to stop. This is damaging. This is kind of sick, like that. Yeah. But if, and it works the very best. I'm sure I wasn't pure. I was really angry. But it works the best the more clear your bodhicitta is. And that's why we say our bodhicitta prayer over and over. That's why we say all beings. That's why we work on seeing no difference between me and Mr. Trump. No difference. He's got Buddha nature, identical to mine, and identical to the Buddha. That's a fascinating koan right there, right? But because of that, transformation's possible. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's dedicate. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for good questions.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon. Oh, be sure to register for Kempo's teachings online. We kind of want a count of people. So.
Is registry now available for people who want to make a custom donation amount? Like, is it possible?
Yeah, talk to Linda. She'll tell you how.
Yeah, I don't email too. Oh, you did? Oh,